Hello, horror listeners. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the channel. Also, make sure to tell us in the comments how you like the story and from where you are watching or listening. If you want to hear any specific story, feel free to request it. Now let's begin the story. I was 13 the winter it happened. 13, still a kid, too young to drive, too old to be fully sheltered. Old enough to believe I could handle myself, but not old enough to understand how quickly everything can go wrong. People think the world only breaks for adults. It doesn't. Sometimes it breaks early, and if you're unlucky, it breaks on you. Back then, I lived in a mid-sized town in northern Washington called Cedar Grove. Population, maybe 22,000. The kind of place with one mall, a couple of chain restaurants, a Walmart that everyone complained about but still went to. Cedar Grove wasn't bad, but it wasn't exactly comforting either. Our apartment complex sat off a road called Alder Street, across from a shuttered gas station where teenagers liked to smoke at night. The buildings were ugly brown bricks, 3 stories each, with staircases that creaked when you ran up them. Rent was cheap. Safety wasn't guaranteed. It was just me and my sister Maya back then. She was 26, working night shifts as a respiratory therapist at the hospital. My parents weren't in the picture. My dad split when I was 6. My mom overdosed when I was 9. Maya had stepped in before the state could. She became my everything. Guardian, mom, older sister rolled into one. And she was good at it, even when the weight of it all showed in her tired eyes. That Christmas, Maya bought me a bunch of art supplies because she knew I spent hours sketching and painting. Pencils, paints, beads, even some clay. It was the best gift I'd gotten in years. But it left me with a problem. Where to put it all? My room was small, barely enough space for my bed and desk. I needed something big, like a heavy-duty storage bin. We checked the usual places: Target, Walmart, even the dollar store. The bins big enough for what I wanted were all around 30 to 40 bucks, which Maya said we couldn't swing right then. She was already working overtime to keep up with bills. I remember her sighing and saying, "Let's check Craigslist. People sell storage totes all the time." I didn't know much about Craigslist beyond hearing kids joke about it at school, but Maya had used it before. She once bought a used microwave off a guy downtown. "You just have to be smart," she said. "Always meet in public, never give your address, and if someone's too pushy, block them." So we started looking. 3 days later, we found it. Extra large storage tote, $8 like new, no cracks. Need gone ASAP. The photo showed a massive gray tote, the kind you could practically climb into. Perfect for everything I wanted to stash. The seller's name was listed simply as Dan. No last name, no picture, just Dan. Maya emailed him from her account while I hovered behind her. Her message: "Hi, interested in the storage tote. Still available?" His reply came 15 minutes later. "Yep, still have it. Can meet today. Where works for you?" Maya typed, "We prefer public places. How about the Walmart on Alder?" Dan's reply was almost instant. "I can just drop it at your place if that's easier. No charge for delivery." Maya frowned, muttering, "Yeah, no thanks." She typed back, "Public place only." Walmart parking lot, 8:30 p.m. He hesitated, then wrote, "That works. Just seems late." "You sure?" She didn't reply. Instead, she handed me a crumpled $10 bill. "You can handle this, right? Just grab it and come straight back. Don't linger." I tried to act confident. "Yeah, of course." She gave me a long look. "Text me the second you see him. And don't get in anyone's car, no matter what." That night, I bundled up in a hoodie, jacket, and gloves. The air was sharp and cold, the kind that burns your nose when you breathe. I loaded a little wagon we had, the kind kids use for toys, planning to roll the tote home in it. By 8:30, I was in the Walmart parking lot. The lot was mostly empty except for a few cars scattered under buzzing yellow lights. I stood near the cart return, clutching the $10 bill in my pocket. That's when a dented navy blue van pulled in, parking crooked across 2 spots. The engine rattled before it shut off. The man who stepped out looked mid-40s, maybe older, tall with thinning brown hair and a heavy black coat that looked greasy at the cuffs. He gave me a quick wave and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You here for the tote?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. He scratched his cheek. Damn, forgot it at home. Only a couple minutes away, though. Hop in, I'll bring you right back. My stomach dropped. Maya's warning echoed in my head. I shook my head. I can't. I'm not allowed. He chuckled like I was being silly. Smart kid, but seriously, 2 minutes. You'll be back before your sister notices. No thanks, I said firmly. His smile slipped. He studied me for a long second, then shrugged. All right, suit yourself, but it's free if you come with me. That's when the alarm bells in my head started blaring. My gut screamed danger. I gripped the wagon handle tighter and stepped back. His eyes narrowed slightly. You live at 417 Pinecrest, right? 3rd floor? I froze. My mouth went dry. I hadn't told him my address. What? I managed. He smiled again, but it was different now, sharper. Saw it in the email your sister sent. Metadata, headers, whatever. Not hard. I stumbled back another step, heart pounding. Then I ran. I sprinted across the lot, wagon forgotten. My breath came in ragged gasps, the cold air cutting my throat. Behind me, I heard the van door slam. Tires squealed. I didn't look back. I darted across Alder Street without even checking for cars. My legs burned, but I didn't stop until I was shoving through the busted front door of our apartment building. I raced up the stairs, nearly tripping, fumbling for my keys with shaking hands. Inside, I locked the deadbolt, threw the chain, and shoved a chair under the knob, just like Maya always told me to, if I was scared. My hands trembled so hard I dropped my phone twice before finally managing to call Maya. But before I could press send, I froze. Footsteps. In the hallway. Heavy, deliberate. A knock. Hey, a deep voice called, muffled through the door. You still want that tote? Come help me carry it. My blood ran cold. The doorknob rattled. I bolted into the bathroom and squeezed under the sink cabinet, pressing myself between the pipes and an old mop bucket. My heartbeat thudded so loud I was sure he'd hear it. Then came the banging. The door shuddered under his kicks. Wood splintered. My hands clamped over my mouth to stop the sobs. Open up, he growled. The pounding went on. 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Then another voice boomed in the hallway. Hey, what the hell you doing? It was Mr. Alvarez, our downstairs neighbor. He was in his 60s, gruff but kind, always smelled of cigars. There was a loud scuffle, shouts, a crack like wood hitting bone. Then silence. I crawled out, shaking, and peeked from the bathroom. The front door was half caved in. Mr. Alvarez stood in the hallway, gripping a metal pipe. On the floor, the man, Dan, or whoever he really was groaning, blood streaming from his nose. When I stepped closer, his eyes snapped open. He lunged, grabbing for my ankle. I screamed and stumbled back. Alvarez swung the pipe again, hard. The man cried out, rolled to his feet and bolted down the stairwell, limping but fast. I didn't think. I just ran too, barefoot, tears blurring my vision, straight out of the building, down 3 blocks, until I burst into the hospital ER where Maya worked. I collapsed in front of the nurse's station, sobbing. Maya came rushing out, panic etched across her face. She grabbed me, pulling me close, demanding to know what happened. The staff called the police. It turned out his name wasn't Dan. It was Stephen Mallory. He had a record stretching across 3 states, assault, attempted kidnapping, even 2 rape charges that never stuck because victims were too scared to testify. He'd been using Craigslist to lure women and girls, offering cheap items, sometimes posing as a buyer. I was the first one to get away long enough for police to catch him in the act. They found him an hour later hiding under a railroad bridge. Maya didn't let me stay another night in that apartment. We packed up everything and moved within a week. She transferred to a hospital in Spokane. We never looked back. But even now, years later, I don't trust Craigslist. I don't trust strange cars. Every night I triple-check locks. And sometimes when I hear footsteps in a hallway, I freeze. Because I'll never forget the way he said my address like it was nothing. Story 2. I never thought a car could almost get me killed. Not the driving of it, not some accident on the highway, but the act of trying to buy one. When people talk about horror stories, they think of haunted houses, ghosts, or masked killers in the woods. Nobody thinks about something as ordinary as Craigslist. But if I've learned anything, it's that real horror doesn't need special effects. It just needs people desperate enough to lure you in and the stupid enough, like I was, to believe them. I was 20 at the time. My name's Ethan Carter, and back then I was living in a small off-campus apartment in Fairview, Kentucky. It wasn't a bad place, just cramped and perpetually smelling of fried food from the diner across the street. Rent was cheap, utilities cheaper, and it was only 15 minutes from the community college where I worked part-time at the bookstore. Between that and tutoring high school kids in algebra, I wasn't making much, but I was saving every dime I could. My obsession, what kept me going through long shifts, shelving textbooks, and late nights marking equations, was the dream of finally getting rid of the car I hated most in the world. That car was a 2002 beige Toyota Corolla my uncle had given me after high school. Beige, sun-faded, and ugly in every possible way. It ticked when it idled, smelled faintly of mildew no matter how many air fresheners I stuffed into the vents, and had a passenger window that only rolled down halfway before getting stuck. My friends joked it was the kind of car serial killers drove in low-budget crime shows. But it ran, and when you're broke, it runs is all that matters. Still, every night when I closed my eyes, I saw something better. A real car. A car that said, "You're not just surviving anymore. You're moving forward." For me, that car was a Mustang. Not some vintage showpiece I could never afford, but a decent used Ford Mustang. Something sleek, clean, fast. Something that would make pulling into the lot at school feel less like an embarrassment and more like, I don't know, adulthood. I had $9,000 saved. Not nearly enough for a brand new Mustang, but more than enough to start looking. I figured if I found a good deal on a used one, I could finance the rest. So I started looking. At first it was fun, browsing dealer websites, scrolling through Facebook Marketplace, daydreaming about color choices. But weeks turned into months and everything was either too expensive, too beat up, or sketchy. My buddy Marcus kept telling me, "Man, you're being too picky. Just grab a Civic or an Accord and call it a day." But I didn't want a day. I wanted a Mustang. That's when I caved and went back to Craigslist. Craigslist had always given me bad vibes. Too many horror stories about scams, too many vague listings with blurry photos. But Marcus swore it wasn't that bad. Filter the BS, meet in public, and don't hand over cash until you've got the keys. Easy, he said. Easy for him. He once scored a $1,200 laptop for $200 from some guy and walked away without a scratch. Me? I had a nervous stomach even looking at the cars plus trucks section. It was a Wednesday morning, about 11:30. I was sitting in the library on campus, pretending to work on a sociology paper, but mostly just killing time. Out of habit, I refreshed the Craigslist search I'd been running every day, and there it was. 2015 Ford Mustang GT. Black on black. 34,000 miles, one owner, $10,800. Need gone ASAP, no trades. My heart did a flip. I knew enough about used car pricing to know that cars should have been listed for at least $17,000, maybe even $19,000. This was a steal, too much of a steal. My gut whispered, "Scam!" My brain screamed, "Call now before someone else does." The listing had 3 photos, one exterior shot in what looked like a driveway, 2 of the interior. Grainy, a little dark, but not obviously fake. License plate blurred. The kind of thing you'd expect from a real seller, not some bot. The seller's name was listed as Tom R. I tapped the number. It rang twice and went to voicemail. I hung up, but before I could even put the phone down, it rang back. "Hello?" A man's voice, cheerful, almost too cheerful. Hey, is this Tom? I'm calling about the Mustang." "Yeah, that's me. Just posted it, man. You're fast." He laughed like we were already old buddies. "This car's perfect for you, I can tell." There was something slick about the way he said it, like a salesman laying it on thick. But excitement drowned out my nerves. He told me he was moving out west to Idaho in less than a week. Said his wife didn't want to deal with a manual transmission anymore. "We're selling the house, dumping the car, everything. Clean title, clean ride. I just need it gone fast." "Where are you located?" I asked. "Little town outside Fairview, place called Mill Creek. About 45 minutes from you, maybe an hour with traffic." I typed it into maps. Mill Creek was rural but not unknown. Lots of farmland, A few old churches, some back roads I'd driven before. Isolated, yeah, but not in the middle of nowhere. We agreed to meet at 5:30 that evening. He gave me an address, and I promised I'd text when I was close. As soon as I hung up, doubt crept back in. $10,800 for a Mustang that clean? Either this guy was the dumbest seller in the state, or something was off. So I did what cautious me always does. I texted Marcus. Going to check out a Mustang in Mill Creek. Here's the address. If you don't hear from me by 7, call. He replied in seconds. El Mao Craigslist murder special. You're dead. Thanks for the support. He sent back a coffin emoji. It started raining that afternoon, the kind of cold drizzle that makes the sky look like permanent dusk. By the time I left campus, the roads were slick and the clouds heavy enough to swallow the horizon. The deeper I drove toward Mill Creek, the more my chest tightened. Gas stations disappeared. Streetlights thinned out. Houses gave way to trailers. Trailers gave way to tree lines. By the time I turned onto the dirt road my GPS demanded, I felt like I'd already made a mistake. The address led me to a sagging one-story house with a tin roof and a flickering porch light. No Mustang in the driveway. No cars at all. Just wet gravel, a sagging swing set, and silence. I sat there in my Corolla for 5 minutes. Then 10. My gut screamed, "Leave!" The front door creaked open. A man stepped out wearing a brown Carhartt jacket, limping slightly, balding on top but with stringy gray hair at the sides. He gave me a wide grin. "You Ethan?" "Yeah, Tom?" "Yep. Sorry, just finishing up helping my cousin. Car's in the garage out back. Gotta grab the keys inside. Come on." I hesitated. Why wasn't the Mustang outside? Still, I told myself maybe he was keeping it out of the rain. The smell hit me the second I stepped inside. Stale smoke, old grease, and something sour beneath it. The living room was almost empty. Just a recliner with a tear down the side, a tiny TV on milk crates, piles of old newspapers. The carpet was stained dark in patches. "Just through here," Tom said, motioning toward a hallway. "I thought you said the garage was out back," I asked. "It is. Door's in the basement." "Basement?" My voice cracked. He chuckled. "Paranoid, huh? That's good, but trust me, I ain't no weirdo. Just 2 seconds. Come on." He started down the creaky stairs without waiting for me. That's when I heard it. A faint dragging sound, metal scraping on concrete, followed by whispering, too low to understand, too deliberate to be ignored. Tom turned at the bottom of the stairs, grinning. "You coming or what?" The basement door swung wider on its own, pitch black inside. No car, no Mustang. "I forgot. I need to call my buddy," I stammered. I turned back toward the hall, but at the top of the stairs another man was standing. Younger, taller, with greasy hair falling into his blank stare. He didn't say a word, just blocked the hallway. "Hey man," I started. Just need some air." He didn't move. Behind me, Tom said almost softly, "You don't want to go that way." I didn't think. Instinct took over. I ducked left into a filthy kitchen, shoved through a screen door, and bolted into the backyard. Mud sucked at my shoes as I sprinted toward my car. I didn't look back until I was inside. Doors locked, engines stuttering to life. They were both standing on the porch watching. One of them was holding a long wrench, or maybe a crowbar. I floored it. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the wheel. The second I had a signal, I called 911. I met officers at a gas station, gave them the address. 2 cruisers went out there. When they came back, their expressions made my stomach sink. "Place is empty," one said. "Abandoned. Are you sure you had the right address?" "Yes, I was there." 2 guys, the house, the smell. No furniture, no utilities. Looks like nobody's lived there in years. Locks don't even work. I didn't sleep that night. At 2:12 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 10 seconds later, a text came through. "You left your test drive early." My blood ran cold. I called 911 again. Officers came to my apartment within minutes. They searched outside. In the bushes, they found a plastic bag. Inside, duct tape, zip ties, gloves, and footprints in the mud beneath my bedroom window. By morning, they'd arrested the man calling himself Tom. His real name was Dale Hutchins, 47 years old, with a record of assault, unlawful restraint, and impersonation. The second man was never found. I never bought a Mustang. I still drive that ugly beige Corolla. But I learned something far more valuable. If a deal looks too good to be true, it is. And no car, no bargain is worth stepping into the wrong house. Story 3. I wasn't planning on buying anything that day. Not really. It was a gray March afternoon in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The kind where the air smells like wet concrete and last week's snow melts into slush at the curb. My son Caleb had just gotten home from his best friend's place across the street. His ears were red from the wind, his hoodie sleeves damp. He kicked his sneakers off at the door and said, half smiling, half pleading, "Dad, I think my bike's too small now." That was a lie. We both knew it. But I smiled anyway. The truth was, Caleb had already outgrown his old red Schwinn months ago. I'd raised the seat and adjusted the bars until it looked like a circus act, him pedaling with his knees practically at his chest. The frame was chipped, the back tire was bald, and the chains skipped every third pedal stroke. And now at 11 years old, right on the cusp of middle school, he'd started noticing what the other kids rode. Sleek mountain bikes with shocks, sharp paint jobs, disc brakes. Not the rattling antique he still had. "We'll see," I told him, which in dad language means maybe if the stars align. He nodded like he understood, but I caught that flicker in his eyes, the hope battling with disappointment. That night, after my wife Melissa went to bed and Caleb was asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table with the glow of my laptop. Bills stacked at one end, half a bottle of store-brand cola sweating beside me. Money was tight. Melissa had lost her office job back in December when the company downsized, and though my warehouse shifts at FedEx were steady, the paycheck only stretched so far. Rent, groceries, utilities, and Caleb's orthodontist bill chewing through it. A $400 bike from a fancy shop wasn't happening, so I did what I always swore I wouldn't. I opened Craigslist. The listings were a graveyard of forgotten rides, bent rims, rusted chains. Only needs a little TLC. But then one ad caught my eye. Kids mountain bike, nearly new, $70. The pictures were clean. The bike was teal, almost the same color Caleb had pointed out weeks ago when we'd walked past the sporting goods store. The tires still had the little rubber whiskers, the seats spotless. The post said, "Daughter barely used it. Outgrew it quick, comes with helmet. Clear Lake area." The seller's name was Brian T. I messaged him, expecting silence or a reply days later. Instead, a ping came back within minutes. Me. "Hi, is the bike still available?" Brian. "Yes. It's practically brand new. Want to see it tomorrow?" It felt lucky, almost too lucky. But when you're broke and desperate to give your kids something to smile about, you learn to shove that little voice of doubt into a corner. Melissa wasn't thrilled. "Craigslist," she said, crossing her arms. "That's how people end up in the news. Guy lures you out. Next thing you know, they find you in a cornfield." "It's just a bike," I said. "I'll go during the day. Broad daylight. I'll take you with me if it makes you feel better." "Damn right you will," she muttered. The next afternoon, we drove 40 minutes north to Clear Lake. The address Brian texted led to a nice enough neighborhood. 2-story houses, manicured lawns, SUVs and driveways. Not the shady back alley transaction Melissa had imagined. Brian was waiting outside when we pulled up. He looked mid-30s, about my height, clean-shaven, wearing a twins cap and a windbreaker. The bike leaned neatly against his garage. "Hey, you must be Derek," he said, sticking out a hand. His grip was firm, his smile practiced. The bike was even better up close. Paint shining, gears tight, barely a scratch. "Why are you selling it?" Melissa asked, her tone casual but guarded. Brian chuckled. "My daughter's more into piano lessons than bikes. She rode it, twice? It's just been sitting here." He sounded convincing. Normal. The kind of guy you'd chat with at a PTA meeting. I handed him the $70 cash, loaded the bike into our trunk, and we drove home. We gave the bike to Caleb that Saturday morning. I'll never forget his face when I wheeled it out. "No way," he gasped, hands to his mouth. "Is this really mine?" Melissa laughed and I nodded. He hugged me hard. Thanks, Dad. This is the best thing ever. Then he was off, wobbling down the driveway, his joy loud and raw, the kind that makes you forget for a moment how heavy life is. Melissa squeezed my arm and whispered, "He'll remember this forever." I hope she was right. For weeks, everything felt good again. Caleb rode that bike everywhere. Loops around the cul-de-sac, races with his buddies, even slow evening rides with me trotting beside him. He made up games pretending to deliver packages to imaginary cities. It was wholesome. It felt like childhood was supposed to. Until April 11th. It was a Sunday just past noon. The first truly warm day of spring, sun bright, the air full of thawed earth. Melissa and I were cleaning up after lunch when I heard it. A scream so raw it didn't sound human. I bolted outside. Caleb was in the street, curled on his side, clutching his leg. His friend Tyler stood frozen, pointing at the ground. Blood was everywhere. His left calf had a gash deep enough to show white, ragged muscle. Melissa screamed his name. I dropped to my knees. "Caleb, buddy, hold on. It's okay, I'm here." Through sobs, Tyler stammered, "The pedal, it broke. It cut him." I looked. One pedal lay twisted on the pavement, the shaft jagged like broken teeth. The other hung half-snapped from the crank arm. The metal edges were razor sharp. The ER was a blur. Morphine, stitches, 30+ inside and out. The doctor said he was lucky it hadn't severed an artery. Melissa held Caleb's hand. I stood in the hall, fist trembling. Not with fear, with rage. Back home while Caleb slept, I researched. The brand, Velocraft Vista 200, discontinued. And then I found it. Pages of forum posts, Reddit threads, a hidden recall notice on the company's site, pedal shaft failures, multiple injuries, exact same break. Brian had known. He had to. The next morning I called him. Me. "Hey, quick question. That bike you sold me, was it part of that recall thing?" Pause. Brian. "Yeah, I think so. But you can just order replacement pedals for free. It's no big deal." Me. "No big deal?" My voice cracked. "My son needed 30 stitches because of your no big deal. He bled all over the street." Silence. Me. "Did you even check before you sold it? Or did you just want $70 that bad?" Brian. "I didn't think it was serious." Me. "You didn't think? Try watching your kid scream while his leg is torn open. That's serious." I hung up before I said something worse. We spoke to a lawyer. Turns out we had a case. Failure to disclose a known recall, injury severity, negligence. I wanted to bury him, to destroy his reputation. Then I found out Brian was a middle school teacher. The irony made me sick. A man trusted with kids selling dangerous junk to parents. But in the end, all I really wanted was accountability. He settled, paid the hospital bills, and at my request, he had to apologize to Caleb in person. We met at a diner in town. Brian looked smaller than I remembered, nervous in his seat. He cleared his throat. "Caleb, I'm sorry. I should have made sure the bike was safe. I was careless, and you got hurt. I'm sorry." Caleb didn't say much, just nodded, polite but distant. I said nothing. Brian left without ordering food. That night, as I tucked Caleb into bed, he whispered, "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy. Can I get a new bike someday? One that won't break?" My throat tightened. "You bet. The best one there is." And I meant it. The following weekend, I dipped into our tax return and bought him a brand new Trek from a certified dealer. Paid extra for alloy pedals, researched every part, every review. Because when it comes to your kid's safety, there's no such thing as a good deal. Story 4. I wasn't planning on writing this. Honestly, I told myself 100 times to let it rot in my memory and stay buried. But some stories don't go away. They sit in your chest like a stone, pressing down, heavier each year, until you realize you'll suffocate if you don't let some of it out. I've changed names for obvious reasons, places too. But the events, the chain reaction of mistakes and bad luck that swallowed a man I once called my best friend, those are real. Every last detail I'll share burned itself into me like acid. The friend I'm talking about, I'll call him Ethan Carter. We grew up in Riverview, Washington, One of those mid-sized towns you find dotting the Pacific Northwest. Not a big city with opportunities, not some tiny farm town either. Just stuck in between. We had a Walmart, a couple of schools, a downtown that people only really visited when there was a parade or the 4th of July fireworks. You either stayed forever or you bolted the moment you turned 18. Ethan should have left. He was smart enough, sharp in ways that don't show up on a GPA. The kind of kid who could fix anything with a circuit board, who could jailbreak an iPhone at 15, who once hot-wired his mom's car just to see if he could. I used to call him the mechanic for anything digital. He wasn't a geek in the classic sense. He hated classrooms, hated textbooks, hated being forced to show his work in math. But give him a broken Xbox or a laptop with a fried motherboard, and he'd bring it back from the dead like some kind of sorcerer. But here's the thing. Washington had this policy when we were in high school. You couldn't graduate without passing a state-mandated math exit exam. Didn't matter if you had every other credit. Didn't matter if you were on track to ace everything else. If you didn't pass that test, you were done. Ethan failed senior year, twice, by a handful of points. I still remember the day he found out, sitting in his old Toyota pickup, hands gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles went white, staring at nothing. "So that's it," he muttered. 14 years in this fucking system, and I get told I don't deserve to walk because I can't solve quadratic bullshit. No diploma meant no real college, no scholarships, no internships. And in a town like Riverview, once you got stuck, you stayed stuck. He landed a job at Cascade Waste Transfer, a dump on the outskirts of town where garbage trucks unloaded before the bigger rigs hauled the waste to the landfill 2 hours away. He hated it. The smell, the grime, the endless grind of 12-hour shifts. But it paid enough to cover his mom's bills after she got laid off. What no one at the dump cared about was what got thrown away. Old furniture, broken appliances, and, most important for Ethan, electronics. Computers, phones, tablets, whole desktops sometimes. People toss out more than you'd think. And Ethan started collecting. Not stealing, just salvaging what no one else wanted. At first, it was just a hobby. He'd bring home busted laptops, solder broken wires, swap hard drives, stitch together working machines out of 3 broken ones. But it grew. Soon he was fixing them, flipping them on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. And he was good, really good. Word spread fast. If you bought a laptop anywhere near Riverview in the last 3 years, odds were Ethan had touched it. He never gouged people, never scammed. In fact, he sold most machines cheap, sometimes even gave them away. He gave me mine for free sophomore year of college when my old HP died during finals. That was the kind of guy he was, quiet, awkward, but generous to a fault. He stayed at Cascade because the flow of discarded computers kept him stocked. It was perfect until the night everything changed. It was a Thursday in late March, raining like it always does here. I was just getting off a shift at the grocery store when my phone buzzed. Ethan. His voice sounded wrong, tight, shaky. "Hey, can you come over? Like now?" "What's going on?" I asked. I found something. I don't know what to do." "Something like what?" He paused. I could hear him breathing through the phone, then barely above a whisper. "Just come over, man. Please." I drove across town, stomach twisted. When I walked into his apartment, it looked like a war zone of electronics. Computer guts scattered across the table, wires spilling out like veins. 3 laptops cracked open, one screen still glowing. Ethan was pale, almost gray, hands trembling as he pointed to a black HP Pavilion. "Found this in bin 9 today. Looked practically new." His voice cracked. I should have just wiped it. On the screen was a folder. Inside, hundreds of video files with names like XW98H.MPG and ZD73 Final.MOV. Random strings of letters and numbers. "I was clearing the drive like usual," Ethan said, rubbing his forehead. "But there was this hidden folder, encrypted. Looked weird. I almost deleted it, but curiosity..." He cut himself off, shaking his head. I cracked the password. Just a zip file, 5 gigs. Opened it, and... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I looked at his face and I knew. My stomach dropped through the floor. He slammed the laptop shut like it had burned him. His eyes were wet, his whole body trembling. I didn't download it. I didn't. He kept repeating it, rocking slightly in his chair. I believe you, I said, though my own voice shook. What the hell do I do? We argued for hours. He couldn't just walk into the police station. Possession alone was a crime. It didn't matter that he hadn't searched for it. Didn't matter that he found it in the dump. Once he'd opened the file, once he'd seen even a second, the law didn't care. He was guilty. I tried to think of some clever workaround. What if you turn it in anonymously, I said. Like, leave it at the station with a note. Let them handle it. He stared at me, face hollow. They'll trace it back. Serial numbers, cameras, something. They'll find me. But eventually desperation won. We planned it out like a heist. Gloves, hoodie, mask, easy to pass off in the tail end of the COVID era. He wiped his prints, packaged the laptop in a Christmas gift bag. The note was typed. This laptop contains evidence of crimes. I found it in the garbage at Cascade Waste. Please investigate. He walked into the Riverview Police Department lobby just before closing, set the bag on a bench, and left. We thought we were safe. We were wrong. The police reviewed the lobby cam, saw him drop the bag, traced the laptop back through records, pulled footage from Cascade's lot, Ethan loading it into his truck. By Monday, he was in cuffs. He called me from jail, voice breaking. They think I made it, man. They think it's mine. Bail was $50,000. Impossible. His public defender tried to argue he'd found it, that he was trying to do the right thing. The DA didn't buy it. They said the anonymous drop proved a guilty conscience. They said cracking the file showed intent. They painted him as a predator. The story hit Reddit and Facebook fast. Craigslist scammer caught with CP. His reputation evaporated overnight. People who'd once praised him vanished. Parents who used to wave at him from Little League games crossed the street. He was branded. I visited him 3 weeks later. The detention center smelled of bleach and sweat. He looked thinner, eyes hollow. I'm not gonna last in here, he said flatly. I was trying to do the right thing, that's all. Just the right thing. I didn't know what to say. I tried everything. Anonymous posts online, legal forms, even cold calling attorneys out of town. Every single answer came back the same. He never should have opened it. He never should have reported it. You can't touch that kind of content without becoming guilty yourself. It's radioactive. And that's when it hit me. There's no safe way to do the right thing. It's been almost a year now. Ethan's case is still pending, buried in the DA's backlog. He sits in a cell, life dissolved, branded forever. And me? I carry the weight of knowing I told him to turn it in. So here's the truth. If you ever find yourself in that situation, don't try to be the hero. Don't report it. Don't keep it. Don't even look at it. Delete it. Destroy it. Walk away. Because Ethan tried to be a good man in a terrible situation. And now he's a ghost of himself. That's the reality. And I wish to God we had understood it before it was too late. Story 5, I never thought buying something as harmless as a stereo could turn into one of the scariest nights of my life. It started simple enough. I had just moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in Brookhaven, Pennsylvania, not far from where I grew up. I'd been saving for months to get out of my parents' place, and when I finally signed the lease that January, I felt like my life was finally moving forward. The place wasn't big, but it was mine. My couch, my kitchen, my quiet little corner of the world. What it didn't have was sound. Music had always been my thing. My dad raised me on Springsteen and Fleetwood Mac. My mom loved Motown and jazz. Growing up, there was always something spinning on the turntable in the living room. I inherited a small stack of vinyl records from them, stuff I'd boxed up during college, and they'd been sitting in my closet waiting for the right moment. Now that I had my own space, that moment had come. The only problem was money. Rent wasn't cheap. Between bills, groceries, and the occasional splurge on takeout, there wasn't a lot left. I wanted one of those compact stereo shelf systems, something with a turntable, speakers, maybe even Bluetooth. But new ones were running close to $300. I couldn't swing that yet. I tried eBay, but most listings looked sketchy or had shipping charges that doubled the price. Facebook Marketplace was a graveyard of junk. Then, out of habit more than anything else, I opened Craigslist. I hadn't used it since college, back when I'd hunted down used textbooks and a beat-up futon. I typed turntable stereo shelf system and filtered for results within 30 miles. That's when I found it. Panasonic shelf stereo, $120. Good condition, includes turntable and all input. Must pick up, text preferred. The photo looked almost too good. Silver faceplate, clean speakers, a record half on the platter. The caption was short, but the setup looked cared for. And $120 was just within reach. I hesitated. Craigslist had a reputation. Everyone knew that. Still, the listing felt normal. The seller had even added a line. No trades, cash only. First come, first serve. I texted the number. Hi, I'm interested in the stereo. Is it still available? The reply came within minutes. Yep, still got it. We can meet tonight if you want. Walmart on Kennett Pike around 8. Easier than giving out my address. I stared at the screen. Meeting at a Walmart didn't sound insane. Public, busy, plenty of cameras. Sounds good, I typed. I'll bring cash. Cool. Silver Camry, gray hoodie. See you then. The smiley face disarmed me more than it should have. By 7:45, I was on the road. The February air was sharp and damp, the kind of cold that seeps into your hoodie no matter how much you tug it close. My car heater rattled weakly as I clutched the steering wheel. I'd pulled $120 in 20s earlier that day. The bills were folded in my back pocket, my phone in the front. I wasn't worried, not really. If anything, I was excited. My living room had an empty corner waiting for that stereo, and I kept picturing myself setting a record down, dropping the needle, filling the space with sound. When I pulled into the Walmart lot, I texted, "Here, blue Honda Civic near Garden Center." No reply. I waited. 8 o'clock came and went. By 8:10, my optimism wavered. Maybe it was a no-show. Maybe the guy had sold it to someone else. I was about to leave when I spotted them. 2 men standing near the far end of the lot by the exit road. One was waving his phone, looking in my direction. The other, taller, stood with his hands shoved in his pockets. They didn't look rushed, just waiting. I slowed my car, rolled the window down. "Stereo?" I asked. The shorter guy with the phone nodded. "Yeah, that's us. Sorry, couldn't find a closer spot." The lot was half empty. Dozens of open spaces stretched around us. I felt a flicker of doubt, but killed it quickly. Maybe they just liked parking near the edge. I pulled into the space beside their car, an old, dented Buick with peeling paint, and stepped out. The taller man walked forward, smiling just enough to seem friendly. "Hey, I'm Jason," he said, offering a quick nod. "Sorry for the wait." "No worries," I said. "You got the stereo?" "Yeah, it's boxed up in the back seat. Good shape, promise." I leaned toward the Buick's window. Sure enough, there was a taped-up cardboard box on the seat. Too neat, too sealed. I should have asked to open it. I should have trusted that gnawing voice in my gut. Instead, I nodded. That's when I felt it. A jab in my ribs, firm and cold. I looked down. Jason had a gun pressed into my side. "Easy," he said softly, almost like a friend calming me. "Wallet? Phone? Cash?" The world narrowed. My breath caught. My hands shook so hard I thought he might pull the trigger by mistake. The other man stepped closer, silent, watching. I handed over the folded 20s. Jason slipped them into his pocket with a casual, "Thank you." "Phone too," he added. That hit harder than the cash. My phone had photos of my family, videos from Christmas, messages I hadn't saved anywhere else, but none of it mattered, not compared to staying alive. I gave it to him. "Good," Jason said, calm as ever. "Now turn around, walk toward the store. Don't look back." My legs moved on instinct. I walked, stiff and mechanical, toward the fluorescent glow of the Walmart entrance. My ears rang with every step. Behind me, tires squealed. I risked a glance as their Buick shot out of the lot and onto Kennett Pike, taillights shrinking into the night. I stumbled into the store. A greeter noticed me immediately, pale, shaking, wide-eyed. "You okay, hun?" she asked. "I was just robbed," I managed. "I need a phone." They brought me inside, sat me down, let me call the police. My voice trembled as I gave the dispatcher the details. The officers arrived fast. They were professional, kind, but brutally honest. "This happens," one of them said. "Craigslist, OfferUp, Facebook. These guys know what they're doing. They pick public lots, wait for someone alone, keep it calm so no one notices. By the time anyone calls, they're gone." I gave them everything. Descriptions of Jason and his partner, the Buick, the gun, the time. Deep down, though, I knew they'd vanish like smoke. Weeks later, I replaced my phone. I bought a stereo, this time from Best Buy on sale. It didn't feel the same, though. Every time I thought about searching Craigslist again, I heard Jason's calm voice in my head. "Phone too." I never used Craigslist after that. I tell this story not for sympathy, but because it could happen to anyone. If you're ever tempted by a great deal online, be smarter than I was. Meet inside. Bring someone. Trust your gut. Because sometimes the calmest voice hides the coldest intent. Story 6, I never thought a hobby could ruin parts of my life. But maybe that's how obsessions work. They sneak in quiet, under the disguise of something harmless, and before you know it, they're rooted in every corner of your days. My name's Ethan Marlowe, I'm 34, and I live in Greenville, South Carolina. I rent a 2-bedroom bungalow with peeling yellow paint, a cracked front step, and a basement that smells faintly like wet concrete even in the summer. I work as remote tech support for a mid-sized accounting firm based out of Atlanta. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and lets me spend too much time on the thing that's been both my comfort and curse, collecting VHS tapes. It started with nostalgia. My dad taped everything when I was a kid. Cartoons, commercials, the Macy's parade, even the weather report if it happened to air between his shows. After he passed away in 2012, I inherited 6 boxes of his tapes. One night I put one in just to hear his voice on the background audio. Instead, I stumbled onto a commercial block from 1994, Burger King ads, a trailer for the Lion King VHS, a weatherman warning about a summer thunderstorm. It felt like I had opened a door back into my own childhood. I've been walking through that door ever since. At first, it was just my dad's tapes. Then, yard sales. A library sale in Asheville netted me nearly 200 tapes for $10. Soon it was thrift stores, eBay, and eventually Craigslist, where people just wanted old boxes gone. Those were the best, the ones untouched, forgotten in attics, marinating in decades of dust. That's where the trouble began. It was a Thursday in late October 2021. Gray sky, air wet with that Carolina damp that makes you feel like rain is permanent. I was scrolling Craigslist, half awake, coffee cooling on my desk while I pretended to work tickets. Then I saw it. Old VHS tapes, home recordings, free. Must take all, first come, first served. No photos, just an address in a little town called Silverton, 45 minutes outside Greenville. I don't know what it was, the lack of detail, the blunt wording, but I felt that collector's itch crawl through me. Sometimes you just know. I emailed, polite, asking if they were still available. 10 minutes later. "They're in a Rubbermaid tub by the curb. Blue lid. Please take them all. Thanks." That was it. No name, no number. Just coordinates and instructions. I grabbed my thermos, keys, and jacket. The drive out to Silverton felt like moving through a half-dream. The roads curled through woods, already shedding their leaves. When I pulled onto Pine Hollow Lane, I saw a sagging ranch house with a mailbox leaning sideways, as if even it had given up. A faded "for sale by owner" sign leaned against the porch. And at the curb, just like the email said, was a blue plastic storage tub, lid half cracked, beads of condensation streaking down the sides. I parked, popped the hatch, and hefted it in. It was heavier than I expected, sloshing slightly like there was water trapped between the cases. I glanced at the house, waiting for a curtain twitch, a figure at the door. Nothing. Not even a car in the drive. Back home, I didn't open it right away. The lid was warped, the plastic damp, and I figured it needed to dry out. I set it by my bookshelf, showered, made some pasta, and let the day fade. That night, around 11:30, I finally cracked it open. Inside were 52 tapes, stacked neatly but worn, their labels smudged with mildew. Most were unlabeled, but a few had Sharpie scrawls. Brandon's B-Day, 1994, Thanksgiving, TV movie. The kind of mix I live for. I tried the first unlabeled one, Static. Then, Flicker, Some Family's Easter Morning. Kids hunting eggs in a backyard. Adults drinking beer on lawn chairs. Grainy, harmless, sweet. The next labeled Summer, 1998. Camcorder footage of a lake trip. A dad narrating, "There goes Tyler with the belly flop." I smiled. The third was a 60 minutes episode taped off TV, commercials intact. I was half asleep on the couch when the VCR clicked off. I didn't know then that the worst of it was still waiting. Fast forward 6 months. By then, the blue tub was buried behind newer finds. That spring, I started dating Rachel, a graphic designer I met through a mutual friend. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room and warm it just by existing. She didn't get the VHS thing, not really, but she respected it. Sometimes she'd curl up with me on the couch, popcorn in hand, and we'd laugh at 90s haircuts or shake our heads at retro commercials. One Saturday, she was helping me organize when she dragged the blue tub out. "Hey, did you ever finish these?" she asked. I shook my head. "Honestly, I forgot about them." "Then tonight," she said, smiling, "we dig." We picked 5 unlabeled tapes. The first few were forgettable. Reruns of Rescue 911, a high school choir concert, a public access cooking show. Then Rachel slid in the last one. It started mid-recording. No static, no title screen. Just a man's face close to the lens, adjusting the angle. Mid-30s, glasses, thin beard. He stepped back, and the shot widened to show a bedroom. A woman was lying on the bed, naked. Rachel gave me a look. "Porn?" "Maybe. Looks old," I muttered. The man climbed on the bed. There was no dialogue, no soundtrack, just the hum of the camcorder and the shuffle of sheets. Something was off. The woman wasn't reacting. Her eyes were vacant, her body limp. A few minutes in, she whispered something. The mic barely caught it, but both of us heard. "Choke me." Rachel's brow furrowed. "Well, okay." That escalated. The man obeyed. At first gentle, then harder. Too hard. The woman's legs thrashed. Her nails dug into his arms. She gasped, clawed, kicked, but he didn't stop. By the time he finished, she wasn't moving. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God!" The man shook her shoulder, called her name, muffled, panicked. He slapped her, over and over. His voice cracked with terror. Then suddenly he remembered the camera. He stumbled forward, filled the frame, and slammed his palm over the lens. Static. I ejected the tape instantly. We sat frozen. The only sound was the popcorn machine still humming faintly in the kitchen. "That was real," Rachel whispered. I wanted to argue. Call it an art film, a fake. But deep down I knew. Her kicking feet, his panic, that wasn't acting. Rachel's eyes welled. "Ethan, we have to go to the cops." "Not yet," I muttered, though my stomach churned. "What if it's staged? We'd look insane." That night, neither of us slept. The next morning, I drove back to Silverton. The house was boarded up, windows sealed with plywood, a for sale sign stabbed into the lawn. Nobody answered when I knocked on the neighbor's door. The email I'd gotten was from a burner account, no trail. Finally, I burned a copy of the tape and brought it to the Greenville Police Department. I told the officer everything. He took my statement, bagged the tape, promised they'd be in touch. Weeks passed. Nothing. When I followed up, they said it was under review, then silence. Rachel couldn't handle it. She'd wake up screaming, swearing she saw the woman's face in the dark. One night, she cried into my chest. Every time I close my eyes, I hear her choking. We broke up 3 months later. She said the tape followed her into every corner of her mind. It's been nearly 2 years. The police never called. I still dig through tapes every weekend, still scroll Craigslist, but I never watch them alone anymore. That tape sits in a separate box in my basement. I don't know why I keep it. Maybe because some part of me believes one day someone will care enough to find out who she was. Sometimes I imagine her family still waiting, still wondering why she never came home. Sometimes I wonder how many other people have tapes like that buried in bins, passed off at yard sales, listed free on Craigslist. And every time I slide an unmarked cassette into my VCR, I brace myself for the static. Because some moments were never meant to be captured, and some tapes were never meant to be seen. Story 7. I wasn't looking for trouble. Honestly, I wasn't even looking for much of anything that night. I was just tired. Bone deep, soul hollow tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying too much. Grief, work, silence. All of it pressing down until even sleep feels like another chore. My name's Ethan Caldwell, 33 years old, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. These days I worked long shifts as a commercial electrician, mostly wiring new apartment complexes or fixing the ones already falling apart. The pay was steady, decent even, but it left me drained. And after the breakup earlier that year, coming home felt more like punishment than relief. It wasn't dramatic, the end of us. Lauren, my ex, just slowly faded out of my life. Conversations turned into silence. Plans got canceled. Smiles stopped reaching her eyes. One morning she sat me down at our kitchen table and said, "I don't think we're what we used to be, Ethan. And I don't think we can get back there." No yelling, no slamming doors, just a quiet goodbye and the sound of her suitcase wheels scraping across the floor. That was 8 months ago. Since then, I'd been living in a one-bedroom off Parsons Avenue, walls bare, fridge empty half the time, and my evenings swallowed by a mix of whiskey, reruns, and Craigslist. Not Craigslist like most people use it, buying used bikes or looking for couches. For me, it became a habit, a distraction. I'd scroll through the missed connections, the for sale ads, the odd job listings, sometimes replying to people I knew I'd never meet. Just words floating through the void. It was easier than thinking. That Friday night in late October, the air outside carried that sharp edge of Midwest cold. I just pulled a 12-hour shift rewiring part of a grocery store renovation. My boots left dusty tracks on the carpet as I collapsed onto the couch. I opened my laptop, cracked a cheap beer, and typed Craigslist Columbus into the search bar like I had 100 times before. Most of the ads were junk. Someone selling a broken treadmill, a rant about noisy neighbors, a guy in Westerville looking for a platonic cuddle buddy. But one post stopped me. "To the man at Harrow's Tavern tonight. You were sitting alone, still in your work clothes. Looked exhausted but kind. I was the girl in the corner booth with the red coat, pretending to read a book. We made eye contact once. I should have said hello, but I didn't. If you see this, write back. Tell me what you were drinking so I know it's really you." I froze. My heart ticked up. I had been at Harrow's earlier in the week, grabbing a late sandwich after work. I had been sitting alone, work shirt still dusted with drywall. Could she mean me? I stared at the words, debating. Normally, I ignored missed connections. Half of them were fake, bots fishing for clicks, or people just writing into the void like me. But something about this felt different. Simple, specific. I typed a quick reply. Blue Moon Draft. Booth by the jukebox. Name's Ethan. I hit send before I could overthink it. Then I shut the laptop, finished my beer, and told myself not to care. 2 days later, the reply came. "Ethan, I knew it was you. I'm glad you wrote back. My name's Rachel. Would you want to meet for a drink? Harrow's Saturday, 8 p.m. I read it 3 times, pulse hammering. I hadn't gone on a date, or anything close to one, since Lauren left. My first instinct was to delete the email. Too risky, too weird. But loneliness is a dangerous motivator. By Saturday night, I found myself standing outside Harrow's Tavern, hands shoved deep in my jacket, rehearsing excuses in my head. Inside, the bar looked like it always did. Low ceilings, sticky floors, a faint haze of cigarette smoke that never seemed to leave no matter how long the band had been in place. The jukebox was spitting out Pearl Jam. That's when I saw her. Corner booth, red coat folded neatly beside her, long dark hair, pale skin, sharp eyes that seemed to weigh the room in a glance. She smiled when she saw me, like she'd been expecting me all along. "Ethan?" she asked as I slid into the booth. "Rachel," I said, my throat dry. And just like that, the night began. We talked for hours. About work. She said she did freelance design work. Lots of late nights on her laptop. About music. She loved old vinyl. I confessed my guilty pleasure love for 90s rock. About family. Hers lived out of state, mine scattered across Ohio. She laughed easily, leaned in when she spoke, made me feel seen, not pitied, not tolerated. Seen. I hadn't felt that in months. Around midnight, she asked, "Want to get out of here?" The question hit me like a jolt. Yeah, I stammered, heart racing. She smiled. "Your place? Safer than mine." We walked through the cold, her red coat bright under the streetlights. At my apartment, we poured cheap rum into mismatched glasses, sat on the couch and kept talking. The hours blurred. At some point, words gave way to closeness. I won't spell out the details because that's not the story. What matters is how alive I felt, how real it seemed. When I woke up the next morning, the couch beside me was empty. Her coat was gone. So was she. The only proof she'd been there were 2 empty glasses and the faintest trace of perfume on my pillow. I told myself not to care, but I couldn't stop smiling. Days passed. She didn't call, didn't text. I checked Craigslist obsessively until, a week later, another message came. "I thought I imagined you. Meet me Saturday. Harrow's. Same time." I barely slept that week. Saturday, I showed up early, palms sweating. She arrived 15 minutes late, apologizing, looking radiant in that same red coat. But something was different. She kept checking her phone, setting it face down after each glance. Her smile felt a little tighter. Still, we drank. We laughed. I convinced myself I was imagining the distance. As we left, she said, "Let's go to my place tonight." I followed, nerves buzzing. But as I ducked into the restroom before we left, I caught something. Rachel, phone pressed to her ear, whispering by the door. "Yeah, he's coming." My chest tightened. I stepped back, heart pounding. When I came out, she was smiling again, coat over her arm. "Ready?" I forced a nod. Outside, she led me to a silver sedan, not the beat-up hatchback she'd mentioned the week before. I slid into the passenger seat, unease crawling up my spine. She shut the door but didn't start the car. "You okay?" I asked. Before she could answer, a voice spoke from the back seat. "Don't move." I froze. A man sat there, masked, pistol leveled at my head. "Wallet? Phone. Now." I fumbled them over, hands shaking. My mouth went dry. Rachel, if that was even her real name, stared straight ahead. No emotion. Like a switch had been flipped. The man grunted. "Get out. Walk. Don't look back." I stumbled from the car, walked 2 blocks before collapsing against a lamppost, retching until there was nothing left. That night blurred into panic, police reports, sleepless hours. Detective Marcus Hale was the one who showed me the mugshot. "Is this her?" he asked. The photo was grainier, harder, but the eyes were the same. Her real name was Samantha Reeves. Record a mile long. Fraud, theft, assault. She and her partner, Daniel Cross, had been tied to at least 4 violent robberies across Ohio. 3 victims hadn't survived. I was the 5th. The lucky one. Lucky. That's what the detective called me. But even now, months later, I still see her. Sitting across from me in that booth, laughing at my dumb jokes, brushing her hair behind her ear as though she really cared. Was any of it real, or was it all just part of the act? Sometimes when the apartment is too quiet, I convince myself there were moments, fleeting, fragile, when she hesitated, when she thought about stopping. But I'll never know. And maybe that's worse than the gun. Maybe that's the part that'll haunt me forever. Story 8. I never thought a refrigerator would nearly cost me my life. It started with exhaustion, not fear. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones after too many changes in too little time. My name is Daniel Mercer, and last spring I was 33, broke, and trying to start over in a town I had never even heard of before signing the lease. I just moved to Brookhaven, Georgia, not the fancy suburban part you might see on real estate ads, but a fading little edge of the city where strip malls sat half empty, and the loudest thing at night was the hum of cicadas. A place people drove through, not to. 2 months before that move, my 6-year relationship ended in a mess of slammed doors, lawyer fees, and me packing my life into boxes I didn't want to open again. I couldn't afford Atlanta anymore, not with rent prices shooting into the stratosphere. So when I saw a half-decent duplex listed cheap in Brookhaven, I signed before even visiting. The place wasn't glamorous. Beige walls, old carpet, the smell of dust in the vents. But it was mine, or at least mine enough. I painted, scrubbed, dragged in a sagging sofa from Goodwill, and set up my tiny desk in the corner of the living room. Every paycheck was already stretched thin, and I'd spent nearly all my savings just turning the place into something livable. But one thing I couldn't live without was a refrigerator. The landlord told me the last tenant had taken it back. I didn't even know refrigerators were something people took with them. The first night I moved in, I stood in my bare little kitchen holding a cold bottle of Coke with nowhere to put it, except a styrofoam cooler I'd bought at the gas station. For 2 weeks, I lived like that. Ice bags melting into puddles every morning, sandwiches soggy by the afternoon. I was miserable. By the time my bank app told me I had $148.20 left until next payday, I knew I couldn't stretch it anymore. And that's when I remembered Craigslist. I sat cross-legged on the carpet, laptop balanced on my knees, scrolling through appliances under the Atlanta Metro listings. Everything was $250, $300, sometimes $500 for stainless steel models that belonged in houses nicer than mine. Then I saw it. Fridge, works great, $80. Upgraded, don't need any more. Posted just an hour ago. One blurry picture. Standard white top freezer model, the kind you'd see in 100 apartments. The location, Willow Creek Road, Decatur. Maybe 15 minutes away. It felt like fate. There was a number listed. I clicked it, half expecting no answer. Hello? A woman's voice. Young, friendly, almost hurried. Hi, I said. I saw your Craigslist ad for the fridge. Is it still available? Yes, it is, she said quickly. But I've had 3 people text already. First come, first serve. If you want it, I can hold it for you, but... She hesitated, then lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. I've been burned before. People say they'll show and never do. If you can send a PayPal deposit, I'll mark it yours. Just $40 to hold it. I froze. My gut twisted a little. It wasn't that she sounded sketchy. If anything, she sounded normal, like someone just annoyed at no-shows. But sending money before even seeing it? I don't know, I started. She laughed lightly. I get it. I promise I'm not a scammer. I'll text you the address right after. Saturday, pickup, okay? Around 2? I glanced at my balance. $148. If I lost 40, it would sting, but without a fridge, I'd just keep bleeding money buying ice and takeout. Against my better judgment, I sent the PayPal. Her username popped up, SummerRay88. Got it, she texted seconds later, followed by 214 Willow Creek Road. See you Saturday, hun. Saturday came hot and sticky, the kind of Georgia day where the air feels like syrup. I loaded my dolly into the back of my old Ford Ranger and punched the address into GPS. The neighborhoods grew quieter the closer I got. Side streets lined with cracked driveways and ranch-style houses that hadn't seen a paintbrush in years. Willow Creek Road was no different. Half the lawns were overgrown. A few houses had cars up on cinder blocks. It wasn't a bad area exactly, just tired. 214 sat at the curve of the road, a faded red brick house with green shutters, one hanging crooked, a dented SUV in the driveway, curtains drawn tight even though it was noon. I texted her. Here. The front door opened almost instantly. She stepped out, late 20s maybe, long blonde hair in a messy bun, denim shorts, a t-shirt with some faded logo. She waved like we'd known each other. You must be Daniel, she called. Yeah, your summer? Mm-hmm. Come on in, fridge is out back. The smell hit me first. Lavender spray, heavy and sweet, almost covering something else, like mildew or stale smoke. The living room was ordinary enough. Big sectional sofa, oversized TV, a couple of movie posters in frames. Not spotless, but not trashed either. So you just moved here? She asked, walking ahead of me. Yeah, Brookhaven, I said. Place didn't come with a fridge. She laughed. I lived out of a cooler once. Worst week of my life. Before I could answer, a man's voice cut in from the kitchen doorway. Fridge is in the garage. I turned. He was huge, 6'4", 6'5", easy broad shoulders, shaved head tattoos creeping up his neck. His eyes never left me. No smile, no nod, just watching. Summer gave a quick smile. This is Travis, my boyfriend. He'll show you. I gotta make a call real quick. And just like that, she disappeared down the hall. Phone in hand, it was just me and him. This way, Travis muttered, jerking his chin. We passed through a laundry room and pushed into the garage. Dim, no bulb overhead, just the faint rectangle of light from the house door. The air smelled of motor oil and something plasticky. There, he pointed toward the far wall. I squinted. A refrigerator stood there, barely visible near the closed garage door. Dragging my dolly, I stepped forward. 3 paces in, I stopped dead. The entire concrete floor was covered in clear plastic sheeting, perfectly laid edges tucked into corners. My stomach lurched. You got a light in here? I asked, voice too casual. Bulb's out, he said flatly. I glanced down again. Plastic, smooth clean. Something shuffled in the back corner, a soft scrape against plastic. My pulse hammered. I forced a laugh. Need to check the plug, make sure it runs. It works, he said. No movement, no offer to show me. Every instinct screamed. I took one slow step back. Actually, I think I left my straps in the truck. I'll grab them real quick. He shifted slightly, blocking half the way. We got some here? His hand motioned vaguely toward the wall. I didn't look. I bolted, not a run, just a near sprint fast enough to pass him without pause. Through the laundry room into the kitchen past the hall, I didn't call for Summer. I didn't glance back. Front door, porch, driveway, truck. I was gone. I pulled into a gas station on the main road, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. 911, what's your emergency? My voice cracked. I went to pick up an appliance from Craigslist. Address 214 Willow Creek. There's plastic all over the garage floor. The guy wouldn't let me test the fridge. Something felt wrong, really wrong. I left. The dispatcher asked if anyone touched me, threatened me, blocked me. I said no. We'll send a unit to check it out, she said calmly. You're safe now, correct? Yeah, I'm safe. That was the last I heard. The ad vanished from Craigslist within hours. The number disconnected. When I looked up the house later, it was just another record in county property logs. I never went back for my dolly. A week later, I bought a spotless second-hand fridge at a churchyard sale for $100. I didn't haggle. I just paid and wheeled it home. Grateful. As for the $40 deposit I lost, that was nothing. Cheap even, compared to the price of whatever was waiting on that plastic-covered floor. Craigslist isn't evil. Most people on there are normal, just trying to get rid of old furniture or pick up a few extra dollars. But not all. Some know how to hide. If you're ever tempted by a too-good deal, remember this. Bring someone with you. Meet in public if you can. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, even if you can't explain why, walk away. Because some things are more valuable than a bargain, like your life. Story 9. I never thought much about Craigslist. It always felt like one of those sketchy corners of the internet I didn't belong on, like a bulletin board with no rules, where strangers could peer into your life without you even knowing. But in the fall of 2015, life had a way of forcing me into things I swore I'd never do. Back then, we had just moved. My husband, Mark, had been offered a promotion with the utility company, and it meant leaving the little duplex we'd rented in Lawrence, Kansas, for something bigger on the outskirts of a quieter town, Brookfield, Missouri. It wasn't exactly the suburbs, but it wasn't the middle of nowhere either. Just wide streets, big backyards, lots of oak trees, and neighbors who waved without ever really talking much. The house was more than we could have asked for. 4 bedrooms, an actual dining room, a covered porch, even a basement. But the best part? It came with a nearly new washer and dryer, shiny stainless steel, barely broken in. Our old set worked fine, but the dryer rattled like someone had dropped a fork inside it, and the washer had started leaving dark streaks on white loads. Instead of dragging them into the basement and letting them collect dust, Mark said we should sell them. "Couple $100, easy," he said, standing in the garage with a tape measure in hand. "On what? Facebook?" I asked. "Marketplace is still hit or miss," he shrugged. "Craigslist gets more traffic." I wrinkled my nose. "Craigslist creeps me out. Doesn't it feel like opening the door to anyone?" Mark laughed. "You worry too much. People use it every day. You just make the listing, keep it short, and done. Nobody's coming here unless they're serious." I let him win, like I usually did when it came to things like this. He snapped a couple pictures of the machines, wrote up a little description. "Working washer and dryer set, $275. Must pick up, Brookfield area. First come, first serve," and posted it under my name. We even added the house number and said to call ahead first. Dumb in hindsight, but at the time, it felt normal. We weren't seasoned Craigslist people. We thought of it like the classifieds in the newspaper. The calls started almost immediately. Some wanted to come that night. Some tried to haggle down to $200 without even seeing the machines. A couple of people asked for delivery. We told every single one the same thing. "We're out of town this weekend. First one here Monday morning gets them." It was supposed to be simple. What we didn't know, what we couldn't have known, was that someone saw that out-of-town detail as an opportunity, and our daughter, 17-year-old Hannah, ended up being home alone. Hannah wasn't supposed to stay behind. We'd planned a trip to Wichita to visit my sister. She'd just had her first baby, and the whole family was getting together for a sort of late fall cookout. But the night before we were supposed to leave, Hannah came down with a stomach bug. She was pale, clammy, couldn't hold down food. "Just let me stay here," she pleaded, wrapped in a blanket on the couch. "I don't want to ride 3 hours in the car like this." At first, I flat out refused. "Absolutely not. You're 17, not 30. No way I'm leaving you home alone overnight." Mark, of course, played the reasonable one. "She'll be fine, Em. She's practically an adult. She's got her phone. The neighbors are right across the street. We'll check in every hour if we have to." I didn't like it, but Hannah looked miserable, and she begged me not to drag her along. Against my gut, I caved. Before we left, I kissed her sweaty forehead and gave her the same speech I always did. "Lock every door. Don't open for anyone, even if they say they know us." She gave me that half smile only teenagers can pull off. "I know, Mom. I'm not a baby." I wanted to believe that. We were sitting in my sister's backyard the next night, folding up paper plates and drinking coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was Hannah. I almost didn't answer. Figured it was her asking where the Tylenol was. But the second I picked up, I heard the panic in her voice. "Mom," she whispered, "I think someone's in the house." My heart went cold. "What? Where are you?" "In my closet," she breathed. I heard glass break, the back window. "Mom, there's 2 guys in the living room." Mark was already standing, reading my face. I hit speakerphone. "Hannah, listen to me. Stay put. We're calling the police right now. Just stay hidden." "I already did," she whispered. "I'm still on with dispatch. A lady's telling me to stay quiet." "They're close, Mom. They're right outside my door." The sound of her voice, shaking, hushed, terrified, burned into me. We could hear the dispatcher faintly in the background, calm but firm. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Don't make a sound. Officers are on the way." Then came the muffled voices of the men inside our home. "Check the garage. Maybe the basement." It hit me like a punch to the chest. They weren't rummaging randomly. They were looking for something specific. The washer, the dryer, that damned Craigslist ad. The whole call lasted maybe 8 minutes. It felt like 8 years. We listened as Hannah tried to hold her breath, as footsteps creaked closer, as drawers opened and shut. At one point, one of the men muttered, "She said they'd be gone all weekend." She. My stomach turned. They'd spoken to me, or at least thought they had. "They're arguing," Hannah whispered suddenly. "One wants to take the TV instead." A crash followed. Something heavy knocked over. Then, shouting, the dispatcher's voice rose. "Stay still. Officers are on scene." Gun commands echoed through the phone. "Police, down, hands where I can see them." Then thudding footsteps. A scuffle. Silence. "Hannah," the dispatcher said gently, "you can come out now. It's over." We didn't think. We just drove. 3 hours straight through the night. I don't remember the gas stations, the lights, the road. Just Mark's hands white-knuckled on the wheel and my own shaking on the dashboard. When we finally pulled in, 2 patrol cars sat in the driveway, red and blue still flashing. Hannah stood in the doorway, pale and wide-eyed, wrapped in a blanket. I didn't let go of her for 5 minutes. The officers gave us the rundown. The men, both with prior burglary records, had called earlier that day about the listing. One even gave a name, Dan. He asked if he could come Sunday. When Mark said no one would be home until Monday, they decided to break in. They brought gloves, a crowbar, even a dolly. They thought it was a free pickup. They never saw Hannah. They never got the chance. Both were arrested, both later sentenced, around 10 years apiece. I asked the detective quietly, what if they'd found her first? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. For weeks afterward, Hannah couldn't sleep. She jumped at every noise, wouldn't shower unless I sat outside the bathroom. We reinforced the windows, bought a better alarm system, stopped using Craigslist forever. But the fear lingered. The what if never went away. Months later, a young couple picked up the washer and dryer, newlyweds, smiling, grateful. We didn't tell them what almost happened, not then, but a few months later we ran into them at Home Depot. The guy grinned. "Hey, those machines still work great." I laughed. Mark did too. Then, without really meaning to, I told them. Their smiles vanished. The guy looked at the floor. "Damn," he said softly. "That could have been us walking into a crime scene." He was right. Hannah's in college now. Healthy, happy. But sometimes when I watch her walk through the door, I get chills. Not because of what happened, but because of what almost did. And that's why I'll never touch Craigslist again.